Hi there, my name is Henry Tenby. I'm the creator of the JetFlix TV aviation streaming service. And in this video, I'm going to take you on a trip down memory lane. We're going to be visiting Hong Kong's famous Kai Tak Airport, going back to mid-1965-ish through the period of the latter 1960s up to about 1969, 1970. And I'm going to be showing you some of the very interesting airliners that were once upon a time very common at the old Kai Tak Airport. Those of you that are in the know probably are aware that they closed the Kai Tak Airport. Well, it's been, I guess, coming up on almost 30 years ago. 97, I believe they closed it, 1997. And they moved the airport to a newly built island location further out of central Hong Kong. But back in the day, the Kai Tak Airport was famous for its close-in quarters, its checkerboard approach, and the amazing banks the aircraft would bank as they would come into Kai Tak Airport. And it was a fantastic place for aviation photographers and videographers alike. I visited Hong Kong, Kai Tak several times in the mid-1990s, but these particular slides were taken by slide photographers in the 1960s. So hope you enjoy the show. Sit back, relax. We're going for an interesting visit back in time, about 60 years. We start our journey with a Canadian Pacific Airlines DC-843 on the ramp at Kai Tak Airport. CPA operated scheduled service out of Vancouver to the Pacific. That was their specialty back in the day. They also served Australia and Honolulu at the time, but nice to see the CPA DC-8 as viewed from the Kai Tak observation deck. Don't want to forget to mention that CPA also served Japan, Tokyo, famously, out of Vancouver. So this particular aircraft might have been a continuation of the Tokyo service. In 1965, Korean Airlines was still operating Super Constellation service on their scheduled routes in Southeast Asia. And here we have an extremely rare Kodachrome of their Lockheed Super Constellation offering a scheduled service between Hong Kong Kai Tak and I guess Seoul. Incredible to see this. These are extremely rare to see in Kodachrome. And the Connies, of course, predated the jet equipment that Korean Airlines purchased in the latter part of the decade, which would have included their first Boeing 720s and, of course, their first fan-powered Boeing 707-320Cs. In the mid-1960s, the Convair jetliner was, as they say, famous in Japan. Japan Airlines operated a fleet of Convair 880s, as did their competitor, Japan Domestic Airlines, JDA. And here we have a Japan Airlines Convair 880 on the ramp as viewed with passengers deplaning from the observation deck. And we can also see the heads of some of the people on the obs deck on the right side of the frame. And to complement the scene, we have a Thai Caravelle on the far left background, and we've got an Air France 707-300 pure jet water wagon also in the back right side of the frame. In the mid-1960s, Hong Kong Kai Tak was actually a haven for lovers of Convair-built jetliners. Here we have a Swissair Convair 990, and in the background, on the left-hand side, we've got a Pan Am 707, as well as a Garuda Convair 990 as well. So yeah, it was absolutely fabulous for the Convair jet lovers of the day. Swissair's Convair 990 definitely didn't have the range to reach between Switzerland and Hong Kong non-stop, so the aircraft would have made several stops en route, possibly in India or Singapore, on the way to Hong Kong, which was possibly the end point. The aircraft might have continued on to Japan, but I'm not actually 100% sure of that. Here's a very nice shot in Kodachrome color of Garuda Indonesia Convair 990 taxiing at Kai Tak Airport as taken from the observation deck. It looks like we have a KLM DC-6 in the background. I think that's what that is. Nosed in to the photographer. Yeah, this particular image was taken from the observation deck. Garuda operated their 990 jetliner aircraft on their intra Asian routes. They didn't reach as far as North America or to Europe, as far as I'm aware. So they're quite rare, actually, and they were basically replaced by DC-8 jetliners by the late 1960s. Whilst we're on the topic of Garuda, here is a Garuda Indonesian Convair twin. I think it looks like a 440. It might be a 340. I don't believe this was operating a scheduled service to Kai Tak. This photo, although taken at Kai Tak, was probably a maintenance-related visit. There were a number of aircraft engineering and maintenance facilities at Hong Kong, even in the mid-1960s, and this aircraft was probably in town to have some maintenance done. It might have been even in the process of being sold to another operator. Here's a great trio of mid-1960s era jetliners congregating on the ramp at Hong Kong Kai Tak. Again, as viewed from the observation deck, closest to camera, we have a Thai International Caravel in cooperation with SAS. So back in the mid-1960s, Thai was under maintenance and I guess you'd call it professional airline support from Scandinavian Airline Systems, who had an ownership stake in Thai as well at the time. So Thai would borrow aircraft from SAS, and I believe this is one such aircraft, the Caravel, which would have been operating between Hong Kong and Bangkok at the time. And we have a Swissair Convair 990 Coronado taxiing for departure. And behind the Swissair is a very rare Lufthansa Boeing 720. I believe Boeing delivered a few of their 720s to Lufthansa, and at least one of them was lost in a crew training accident. So they were quite a rare type, as fairly quickly Lufthansa upgraded to the 707-300 series and 400 series to replace the lesser capacity Boeing 720s. So Lufthansa's 720s were pretty much a fixture in the mid-1960s, but by maybe 67, they were all gone. For those of you with very keen eyes, you'll notice an RAF, Armstrong Whitworth Argosy, taxiing. I guess it had just landed, so it's backtracking on the runway, taxiing towards the terminal building. And here's another view of a Thai International Caravel being ground serviced. Lots of activity around the aircraft, baggage being unloaded, and ground staff milling about. And looks like there's somebody leaning through the forward door there behind the cockpit on the starboard side. And you'll notice in the background is the itinerant ramp, and it looks like there's a KC-97 parked and possibly a 990 on the left-hand side by the apartment buildings. And here we have another Asian stalwart airliner of the day. It's a Civil Air Transport of Taiwan, C-118 or DC-6, taxiing for departure as viewed from the airport observation deck at Kai Tak. We've got a KLM DC-8 on the left-hand side of the frame as well. Certainly, Taiwan had a very interesting mix of airliners in the mid-1960s, and if you visited Kai Tak, you had a great choice of classic airliner types for flying up to Taiwan. I certainly would be probably doing many back and forth round trips to get them all in the logbook. And here's a really fabulous view, close-up side profile of a Thai International Caravel on a very wet day, high saturation. It rained a lot in Hong Kong, even in my mid-1990 visits to Hong Kong. I got lots of rain, lots of saturation, actually a lot more rain and cloud than I ever saw of sun, and it was no different back in the 1960s. And in the background, we have a BOAC Boeing 707 400 water wagon in the background. So yes, BOAC was definitely very much a prominent carrier with lots of frequency between Hong Kong, the colony of Hong Kong, and Great Britain at the time. This is a fairly obscure but rare C-46 Taiwanese registered. In the mid-1960s, there were some airliners that were based with low-profile companies registered in Taiwan that were undertaking work for Uncle Sam during the early years of the Vietnam conflict. And I believe this C-46 might have been one such aircraft, as they did have quite a interesting link-up of movements of personnel and goods from Taiwan down to Hong Kong and then on to bases in Thailand in support of the early Vietnam War efforts. Back to the aircraft maintenance situation, we have a Garuda Indonesian Lockheed Electra in the hangar undergoing some form of maintenance, receiving maintenance attention at Hong Kong Kai Tak by one of the engineering companies of the day. The engineering companies served many of the Southeast Asian airlines as well as militaries as well back in the mid-1960s. And yeah, the Lockheed Electra was delivered, I believe, brand new from Lockheed, and they would have been in service with Garuda through the late 1960s. And Ansett ANA of Australia sent one of their DC-4s up to Hong Kong for engineering support. They're doing a heavy overhaul here. Looks like they've got all the engines off and the wingtips have been removed, the airplane's up on jacks. So yeah, they're doing some form of very heavy maintenance on this aircraft for return back to Australia. Not the best shot, but this is certainly quite a rare image. This is a Macau Air Transport Piaggio 166. Fairly interesting company. It was originally owned by Cathay Pacific. And in 1960, they sold the company to a couple of Taiwan-based, I guess, billionaires of the day, two gentlemen by the name of Roger Lobo and Stanley Ho purchased Macau Air Transport from Cathay in 1960. This company specialized in flying, I guess, the well-to-do between Hong Kong Kai Tak and Macau. Obviously, the Piaggio was a very low-capacity aircraft. It maybe had seating for half a dozen passengers, and it was not a very lucrative business. And by, I believe it was 1966 or 1967, Mr. Lobo and Mr. Ho decided to fold the airline. They shut it down and it was no more. So this particular slide, taken in 1965, was taken a few years before the company ceased operations. This is a close-up view, telephoto lens looking towards the itinerant ramp that we saw earlier, showing some interesting military aircraft present of the day. We've got an RAF Vulcan on the far left-hand side, and Uncle Sam had a fairly heavy presence on this particular day. We've got a Taipei-based U.S. Navy C-54. I think they called it an R-4D, and there's another USAF, looks like a C-54 in the background, as well as a South Vietnamese Air Force C-47. The South Vietnamese Air Force was fully backed by Uncle Sam, and as you can see, the aircraft is in essentially a very lightly modified USAF color scheme with a very similar roundel, USAF roundel, to the U.S. Air Force. And also in the background on the right-hand side, we have a Royal Navy or RAF Wessex. Hong Kong Kai Tak in the mid-1960s received a lot of fabulous military transports, rare stuff, rare as hen's teeth. This is a Royal Lao Air Force C-47 or DC-3, super rare. And in the background, we've got an RAF Blackburn Beverly, and on the left-hand side, in the background, we've got an RAF Shackleton. You'll notice a lot of these were taken under cloudy and wet conditions. This is a U.S. Army Caribou, the U.S. Air Force C-47 and C-54 in the background. Looks like there's a KC-97 in the far background beyond the nose of the Caribou. And it looks like an HU-16 as well, possibly U.S. Navy. And there's other DACs in the background, USAF military DACs in the background as well. So yes, Uncle Sam had a very impressive and ongoing presence at Hong Kong Kai Tak in the mid-1960s. At the start of the Vietnam conflict, the United States military aircraft were painted typically white, gray, silver. But as we got to about 1966, 1967, it was decided that a camouflaged scheme was more appropriate to protect the airplanes when flying over the foliage. So here we have a C-47 gunship parked on the itinerant ramp at Kai Tak, and it is sporting a camouflage scheme, again, just to protect the airplane from enemy fire whilst it was flying over vegetation in Southeast Asia, in particular over Vietnam. We now jump over to Civvy Street, and up to 1969, this is a Winter Airways Viscount 800. Winter Airways was a fairly short-lived Taipei-based regional airline, I guess you would call them. They purchased two Vickers Viscount 800s from BEA in 1969, and I believe the company only lasted in business for a year or two, but as we can see, were operating one of their Viscounts on a scheduled service to Kai Tak Airport, looking absolutely fantastic. And Winter Airways would have been competing with the established Far Eastern Air Transport airline, also based in Taipei, FEAT, had a much larger fleet than Winter Airways. They had Viscounts, which, as we can see here, we have a Viscount 800 operating a scheduled service into Kai Tak in 1969. But Far Eastern Air Transport also had DC-3s and Caravelle jetliners as well in the late 1960s. And I would say their prime route of the day would have been their linking service between Hong Kong Kai Tak and Taipei's Songshan Downtown Airport. By the early 1970s, China Airlines, which is the flag carrier of Taipei, Taiwan, had purchased a small number of Boeing 727-100s for their intra-Southeast Asian and Asian routes, medium-haul routes, and we had two different 727-100s photographed at Kai Tak in these particular codograms taken in 1971. Very nice to see. This 1970 Kodachrome shows Korean Airlines DC-930 HL7201. It was the only DC-930 that the company had, which they took delivery of in 1967. And they also had a baby DC-9 as well. Korean had a DC-910, which they took delivery of in 1970. Both Korean DC-9s, the Baby 10 and the DC-930, were sold to Hughes Air West. The Baby 9 left the fleet in 72, and in December of 72, and the DC-930 left the fleet for Hughes Air West in February of 1973. Yeah, so they were quite rare DC-9s. Here we have a Malaysia Singapore Airlines MSA 707-300 holding to turn on to the active. Of course, Hong Kong only had the one runway at the time, so it was a very, very busy runway and a busy airport. So this particular shot, we have the aircraft at the hold position. Malaysia Singapore Airlines, of course, was the preliminary or the predecessor company to Singapore Airlines. So, yeah, in the famous MSA colors. But by 1972, 1973, we started to see the emergence of the Singapore Airlines branding. By 1970, Japan Airlines had quite a large fleet of DC-8s, from the original DC-8 3040 series to the DC-50 series, DC-8 62s, as well as the stretch DC-8 61 aircraft like what we see here being ground serviced. That would have been a nice flight, actually, on the DC-8 61 between Tokyo and Hong Kong Kai Tak. I would have loved to have been on that flight back in the day. JAL's DC-8 61 fleet remained in service with them and their sister company, Japan Asia Airways, I believe up until about 1985 or 1986. So yeah, they had quite a long life. And of course, by 1970, Japan Airlines had their first jumbo jets in service. And of course, the jumbo jets, the 747, early 747s would remain in service with JAL for many decades. But here we have a very early Kodachrome taken in 1970s. So JAL were obviously operating their 747s between Tokyo and Hong Kong Kai Tak in the very early years of service. So absolutely fantastic to see that. Thank you for watching, and I really hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informative, interesting, and if you have any old Kodachromes from the 1950s and 1960s, or even up through the mid-1970s that are sitting in a box collecting dust, I can use those old Kodachromes and produce interesting videos like this video. So please don't hesitate to contact me if you're interested in making available or selling or providing me with any old aircraft slides that you have sitting collecting dust. Thank you very much. And please take a moment and like the video, and I really look forward to seeing your comments. Hi there, my name is Henry Tenby, and I'd like to tell you about my brand new book. It's called From Lodestars to Jets, and it's the most image-heavy, comprehensive, it's the most extensive history on Air Canada, Trans-Canada Airlines that has ever been published in the annals of aviation history. This book, this story, the great history of Trans-Canada Airlines and its aircraft, is told through the memoirs of a very early employee. His name was Clayton Glenn, and he was responsible for aircraft fleet planning and engineering related matters with Trans-Canada Airlines from pretty much the time he was hired, which was 1943, right through his retirement in, I believe it was the 1980s. But this book covers the period 1943 to 1964, the mid-60s, and it includes all the great aircraft that were operated by Trans-Canada Airlines from the 1940s and 50s through to the mid-60s jet age, including the Lockheed Lodestar, the Connies, North Stars, Constellations, and then the Viscount, Vanguard, DC-8, and DC-9. So it's an absolutely fabulous book. The book is a coffee table picture book, so it's hardcover. Look at this, it's absolutely gorgeous, loaded with pictures. There's 600 images in this book. It's 300 pages, and I'm going to give you a walk through the book so you can see exactly what it's about so that you can order a copy for your library. This is a limited print run, so you need to order your book to secure your copy before they sell out. The book is absolutely loaded with images, that many of which have never been seen before. Let's have a look at the pages, and then you can decide if this book deserves a spot on your bookshelf. I'm going to give you a little bit of a tour of the book. Isn't that gorgeous? It is printed on 105 GSM paper, so it's super high quality paper. It is absolutely loaded with images. As I say, there are approximately 600 images, just under 300 pages. Many of these images have never been seen before, and the stories that are within these pages, many of them have long been forgotten, and it is information that is absolutely fascinating relating to engineering and fleet planning and fleet development issues at Trans-Canada Airlines. Look at that Viscount wing structure design, feathering system. We've got a section on the Bristol Freighter, some face changes around TCA engineering, and then sections on the Connie. Models make moolah, of course, for you aircraft model fans. Whole sections on the Connie, North Star. There we go. Engineering Department, 1950. Fabulous shot taken at, where's this? Cartierville, I think, possibly. I think that's possibly taken at Montreal Cartierville Airport. Absolutely gorgeous. And this will take you back to the good old days of Trans-Canada Airlines. As I say, I believe this is the most comprehensive history on Trans-Canada, Avro jetliner, that's right. Trans-Canada Airlines was instrumental in the development of this aircraft, and the story is explained in some detail here by Clayton Glenn. And as you can see, we go all the way back, but if we jump ahead, of course, up to the jet age, the introduction of service to the DC-8s, and other airplanes that were considered by TCA at the time, including the Comet, 707, Caravelle, etc. They're all covered. There we go, Clayton's trip to Russia. These are the personal memoirs of Clayton Glenn. So this is not the same old Air Canada history that we've seen many times over the decades. This is all brand new information, brand new stories, Clayton's personal experience and personal
contributions that he made to the various aircraft that were selected by TransCanada Airlines during its formative years. Some would say the most interesting years, actually, of the 1940s and 1950s into the start of the jet age. So there you have it. That was a beautiful photo history of this book. Hardcover, as I say, it's just under 300 pages. And I can just tell you exactly how many pages it is. I think it's 288. Let's have a look here. Our page count is 283 pages. So that's it. 105 GSM. The book weighs about 2 pounds, and we haven't printed tons of them. So it's a very limited production run. If you want one of these books, do not waste any time. I've posted a link in the upper right-hand corner of this video that'll take you to the book information and order page. Also, I should point out that time is of the essence. Limited production on these books. Once they're sold out, they're probably sold out forever. So if you want to have a copy of this book on your bookshelf, it is an absolutely unique book if you're a lover of classic airlines, Canadian airline history, and of course Air Canada, TransCanada Airlines. You need to act quick to secure your copy. Thank you for watching this video. I look forward to seeing your order, and I hope you will enjoy the book as much as I enjoyed putting it together. Thank you very much.